So I had an interesting discussion about the Vanguard Total World Index ETF and the disgusting, discriminatory, nasty ideology known as diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm not trying to roast this guy, but I don't like typing long conversations in the comments section. So I thought this was an interesting topic and a good thought experiment. So we're going to go through what me and him kind of talked about, and I'm going to give you my honest thoughts about whether VT, the Total World Index, represents DEI. VT being you invest in every investable stock in the world at market cap weights, and DEI being a program that, on the surface at least, likes to promote minorities into positions of power and authority to right previous wrongs that were in the United States. So let's read Slurpy's comments here. But isn't VT as DEI as it gets? How do you get more diverse, impartial, and inclusive in your investment portfolio than that? So I first want to address a big difference between the finance world and the social world. So humans are social creatures. We have social norms. We interact with each other. You know, we're all about interactions and, building communities. That's what humans do. And how we interact is kind of controlled by social norms, mores, et cetera, et cetera. That kind of diversity in a social setting is completely different than diversifying in an investment portfolio. The VT ETF is fantastic in my opinion, not only because it provides diversification. A lot of ETFs provide diversification. That's kind of the point of an ETF. But it follows the logic of efficient markets, where you assume that publicly traded securities reflect all known information. It's basically the market's current consensus on future events. The future is unknown. Everybody in the market participates, and based on their buying and selling, they determine the current price of any security on a public exchange based on the market's consensus of the best guess about the future. That's why I believe the VT ETF is superior, because it doesn't discriminate. Now, you may think that sounds similar to DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we'll discuss this in a little bit as we go down the comments. But it's something totally different. So I respond here. Look at that handsome picture. America is the DEI king. Every other country is sane and rational. That is true. The concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion is a American-born ideology. It's been promulgated and spread around the world by the United States of America. We're usually the forefront of culture war, et cetera, for good or for bad. But DEI is a very American thing. It is not a global thing, and it has nothing to do with investing in stocks across multiple countries. So let's keep going here. Slurpees says, so if you buy VT, you are staking your entire future on DEI. You want as diverse and inclusive of a portfolio that is completely impartial, rewarding best performers at market cap weights. So the VT ETF does not reward the best performers. It buys every investable company, or at least as close to it as possible. Obviously not every single freaking company is in VT, but it's a good approximation. It buys them at the current price that they are currently trading at. So it's not rewarding the best performers. Every time you buy VT, you are buying every stock at its exact investable weighting in the global market capitalization. You're not buying more of a winner. You're buying the winner exactly where the market says it should be. That's what market cap weighting is. Now, the portfolio being inclusive, it's kind of a weird concept. So in a social setting, inclusive means, you don't judge somebody by their race or their grill or their hairstyle or their gender. Whereas in the VT ETF, you're not discriminating at all based on a financial calculation that the market has determined that a stock should trade at. So you're confusing a social setting, which is entirely different than a financial setting, and you're mixing them together. But it'll make more sense as we keep going. And America represents that core value the most at the present moment, which is why it represents the highest composition in there. So I guess his argument is that U.S. stocks are a huge percentage of the global market cap because we're diverse and inclusive. I don't think that's the reason why. I think the reason our companies have such high valuations. There's a lot of things that feed into it, but America's seen as the place to invest. It's more capitalistic than other countries. It's a very financialized economy. And if a bunch of companies are listing on U.S. stock exchanges, that's going to contribute to it. But also there's this impression that America is like this exceptional place. There's something special about the soil. It's magic soil. And because of that, people pile into U.S. stocks. And there's also the effect of performance chasing, where U.S. stocks have done insanely well over the past decade or two. People look at the chart and then they invest based on the chart, which in my opinion is illogical, but whatever. So that's some of the factors about why U.S. stocks are at such a high valuation. That it hasn't been the case historically, and I suspect that's not going to be the case forever into the future. I could be crazy, but whatever, U.S. stocks, bro. That could change. America could become less DEI and VT would reflect it. I mean, this might be a troll, but I don't think a racially divisive social idea is the reason that VT is 60% U.S. stocks. U.S. stocks have high valuations, and they've done well. And they're very profitable, and they're very good companies. And there's a lot of optimism about the U.S.'s future. That's why the valuations are where they're at. It's not DEI. Therefore, being homogenous, all U.S. stocks, bro, is for the weak and misguided. Well, there's nothing homogenous about U.S. stocks, bro. There's all sorts of industries and there's thousands of companies on the U.S. stock exchange. The only difference, because, we live in a globalized economy, the main difference is where the freaking stock is listed. Okay? I mean, you could have a foreign company list on the U.S. stock exchange. There's nothing homogenous about U.S. stocks, bro. I think I am following you so far, but then how do you reconcile betting your entire future on DEI and being anti-homogenous while at the same time doing a complete 180, saying it is so terrible that you rather have grifters at the helm than anyone that might represent the core principles you are staking your entire future on? So DEI, very simply, it's not under the surface about equality. It's always been about supremacy and power. People that shill DEI have one intention. They want to use, the past social issues of the United States in order to benefit and elevate and give special privileges to their ethnic group. So it's not about diversity, equity, and inclusion. It was never about being nice. Okay? I mean, no, I don't think anybody opposes that. Like, if I talk to a black dude on the street, I'm not just going to be mean to him for no reason. And if I have to work with a black dude, okay, I'll work with a black dude. That is what equity and inclusion is, okay? DEI says that because there is a mismatch in representation in a certain industry, we need to make sure that misrepresentation is balanced. So if blacks are 14% of the population, but they're only 5% of our accounting department, well, we need 14% of our accounting department to be black. And you can quickly see that is literally a racially based discriminatory ideology that tries to make everything be this perfect match based on the certain races' representation in the population. But the funny thing about DEI is it only matters in certain categories. So if you look at the NBA, for example, there's a lot of African Americans in the NBA. Nobody is saying we should have more, people of non-color in the NBA. There's not a representation problem. So DEI is only used in circumstances where it benefits, it provides more power, status, and benefit to a group. And they use guilt, shame, and propaganda, frankly, to push their chosen people, their favored people, into positions that they may or may not be qualified for. That's all it is. And furthermore, it exacerbates racial tension. Because instead of having a colorblind workforce where you say, okay, we don't care what your gender or race is. Don't be mean to each other. Respect each other. That's an okay message. There's nothing wrong with that. But what DEI does is it constantly lectures non-people of color that, oh, look what happened in the past. You should be guilty of that. You're part of the problem. Your ancestors were not nice. You need to make sure that these people who didn't actually experience it, you need to make sure that they feel welcome. And you need to basically tiptoe around them. Okay, you need to cater to them. You need to watch what you say. You do microaggressions. You are inherently evil. And that creates it basically reinvigorates racial animosity in the workforce because you're constantly bringing up historical grievances. You're constantly rehashing them. Instead of trying to achieve some kind of synthesis where you say, okay, what we did in the past was bad. We're not going to discriminate anymore. Okay. You constantly reiterate, look what happened. Look at the slave trade. Look at the Jim Crow laws. Oh my God. Let me tell you all these stories about how my grandpa was treated like crap. And it's basically an industrial guilt complex that is designed to shatter your confidence, and it's designed to make you not question people putting, certain minority groups into positions that they may or may not be qualified for. Because if you question that, then you're a racist, apparently. That's all DEI is. It's a grift. It's designed to push people into positions that they may or not be qualified for simply based on their race. That's all it is. And it's there to constantly shame non-people of color, to make them feel bad, and to make sure that they never question who gets promoted, or if somebody gets hired over them or promoted over them. You cannot question that, because if you question that, well, maybe you wish the past would come back. It's all a shame and guilt complex. And I don't know how this ties into VT. It's very odd. I don't know. Maybe this guy's trolling, but we'll keep going. So I said, your understanding of DEI is flawed. DEI is not impartial. It favors certain investments, as we'll call them, over others. You're taking the name DEI literally when it's nothing other than a cover for favoritism and grift. America is fundamentally flawed and delusional for its embrace of DEI, which can only be created in an insane asylum like the United States. So if we were going to do DEI in the stock market, you would basically go all in VXUS, the international investments, because they did bad in the past. They underperformed in the past. So therefore, you need to give them a leg up. So you would actually overweight international. This is funny. All right, so here's Slurpees again. So then you would be in favor of DEI policies in business, government, and investments, so they truly reflected the literal interpretation. Well, the literal, if you think the literal interpretation is don't be mean to people because of their race or gender, yes, that's actually how it used to be in the United States. I remember it, okay? And then all of a sudden there became this obsession with race. It's all everybody talked about. Race. And what that does is that stokes animosity and tension. And then pretty soon every workforce, every business, every government organization is just this low-grade race war where, the black people are gathering together and they have their little group, and the Hispanics have their group, and the Asians have their group. And you can tell that behind the scenes there's politicking going on. How do I advance my people? How do I benefit my people, even if it hurts other people? Which apparently was bad in the past, but now it's okay because we're, correcting the past by repeating the past. That's the logic of DEI. It's a grift. Huge grift. But I mean, assuming DEI reflected not being mean to people for no reason, okay, that wouldn't be a problem. But to say that VT is a DEI investment is not the case. DEI is favoritism. DEI is preferential treatment. DEI is exclusionary, which would imply that you're not buying a total world index at market cap weights. Your issue with DEI is that there are some people hijacking the term and using it to promote partiality. No, that's what they all do. It stokes nonstop racial animosity. And there's only one group of people that are not allowed to ever question it, because if you do, you're done. But it still seems to me that even if we accept that this is the case, 100% of them read 1984 and collectively ask why they can't do this with the term DEI, even though we know that isn't true, then we would still have to address the position of homogeneity. It is better to be more homogenous and intentionally concentrated. Once again, this has nothing to do with, there's a difference between finance and social homogeneity. So I use this example all the time. If I hang out with a guy that chews Velo pouches, likes to drink beer, is conservative, was in the military with me, at the same time as me, has the same interests as me, I am more likely to get along with that person, and I am less likely to come into conflict with that person. Could I come into conflict with that person? Absolutely I could. I could have disagreements with him. Maybe we both like a chick. We both compete for her. We get mad at each other. That's possible. But since we're so similar, we actually have fewer flashpoints. There's fewer opportunities where we would come into conflict. So what you have there is, if you're more homogenous, if you're more similar to somebody, you have less disagreement with them. You cannot say the same for somebody that's totally different with you. Like, let's say I was put into a room with a, Muslim, black, lesbian, far left Democrat fanatic. I have a suspicion that me and her would not get along as well. We'd probably have more flashpoints, and we'd be more likely to, run into issues. Now, we could get along and tolerate each other, sure. But the second that somebody comes in the room with us and says, well, because she is a Muslim, black, lesbian, whatever, and they were treated bad in the past, therefore we're going to give her a raise, or we're going to promote her over you, well, that would piss me off. So homogeneity, when it comes to social interactions, it mitigates conflict. Doesn't remove conflict, but it mitigates it. The more diverse and different you are, the more likely you are to get into conflict. That is the most logical, common sense thing, okay? But we ignore that in our society. U.S. stocks are not homogenous, okay? They're just listed in a country. Is it better to be more homogenous and intentionally concentrated, all U.S. stocks, bro? No, you should be globally diversified at market cap weights. There's nothing about a company being listed in the United States that says you should overweight that company. I think you should own the company at the weight that the market assigns it. And you should dollar cost average into that company exactly where the market assigns it. Or less a margin, let the free market and societies decide. Well, of course you should have a free market decide. I mean, that's ideally when it comes to a financial investment. If you're a fan of the efficient market hypothesis, which people make fun of, but I mean, I can argue with anybody about that. I think a lot of people misunderstand what that means. If you believe in the efficient market hypothesis, yeah, I think it's better that you are globally diversified. Okay, instead of performance chasing and buying companies literally just because they're listed in the United States. It seems that there is still an inherent contradiction. Totally. Embrace changing demographics and have your portfolio reflect those changes as a whole, or make a conscious effort to put energy into trying to keep everything concentrated. Once again, you're mixing up social issues with finance. I mean, if I buy two stocks, well, I'm more diversified than if I buy one stock, because one of the companies could go bankrupt. Now, both could go bankrupt, but, at least one won't, hopefully. So I've kind of spread my risk. That's totally different than putting two people together that are inherently different people in like every aspect of their being. It takes energy, time, and resources to ensure things stay homogenous. Not really. It's called immigration policy. For what end? If you believe that the concentration is more valuable in principle, all U.S. stocks, bro, then it would make sense, but you don't believe that. You're completely 100% against the idea so much that you're betting your entire future on being against it. Well, not really. I'm exposed to U.S. stocks. It just doesn't make sense. You have to bend over backwards to try to figure it out. I'm bent over right now, and I'm huffing and puffing. DEI doesn't mean DEI. Homogeneity is weakness, except when it is a strength. Well, that's a very American saying right there. VT is good because it is diverse, except for the fact that it has U.S. stocks in it, which are bad because they are diverse because being diverse is bad. Okay, this is a funny conversation, but my core argument is there's a huge difference between human social interaction and spreading your money over multiple countries and not picking a stock simply because it's listed in the United States. So thank you, Slurpees, for the engaging conversation. I didn't want to freaking type this all day. You might be trolling, but I guess it's an interesting thought experiment. Is VT DEI? I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think this radical, clownish social program that's discriminatory and causes social tension is the same thing as buying every stock in the world at market cap weights based on the efficient market hypothesis? Let me know in the comments below. Have a good day.